You're such an asshole.
Got kind of a three-piece request here. This lady would like to remain anonymous. It's reaction to real Phyllis Schlafly versus Hulu series depiction. So did Hulu come out with and they ripped her apart or something? Yeah, anything made of everything made now out of Hollywood, Netflix, Hulu, any media made today is a lie. It's all a lie, and at best it's an innocent white lie or a spin, but it's a lie. So I am sure they butchered it. Hi Aaron, I request anonymity in a video response to my query. Please watch a 5-minute, 56-second interview with the real Phyllis Schlafly and a 2-minute, 22nd trailer of the new Hulu series depicting her called Mrs. America. Please also read the article, Problematic Women Phyllis Schlafly Daughters Tells Two Story Mrs. America Chose to Ignore. Please discuss that. All right, well, did you provide me the links? Oh, here they are. So let's watch the Phyllis. Well, who is Phyllis Schlafly? I think I remember this from the 80s. Am I confusing her with Eleanor Cliff? Schlafly, Phyllis Schlafly. Born 1924, died 2016, was a movement conservative and author. She held staunchly conservative political views, opposed feminism and abortion, and successfully campaigned against ratification of the Equal Rights Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. Her book, A Choice Not an Echo, is a polemic against Republican leader Nelson Rockefeller, sold more than 3 million copies. Wow! Co-authored books on national defense, was critical of arms control agreements with the Soviet Union. In 1972, Schlafly founded the Eagle Forum, a conservative political interest group, remained its chair and CEO until her death of 2016. All right, died 92. BA, Juris Doctorate, a lawyer. Suzanne Vankner is her niece. Well, I didn't know that. Well, B. All right, so now we know about her. Let's go ahead and watch the interview. PBS. Make PBS your local station. No!
I'm interested in your characterization of women's liberation people or as a group. In November 1972 in your newsletter, you wrote, "Their motive is totally radical. They hate men, marriage, and children. They are out to destroy morality and the family."
And just so you know, this looks like this, okay, with John Halloween, 1977. So this was early on. It's not like today where they, what was it, the Spanish feminist teacher wanted to castrate all boys. We're not talking this recent, we're talking quite some time ago.
Do you still feel that? Is that quote still inaccurate?
Yes, I think that it is an anti-family movement. I think they target men as the enemy. Yeah. They teach that women have been kept in a condition of oppression and serfdom for all these years, and that society owes it to them to take care of their children and to find them jobs at the expense of more qualified.
Holy shit! Like Corona Chan didn't prove that today. This video is almost as old as I am, and it's just as germane and relevant. Now back then, you know, I wasn't around. Well, I wasn't that old, but I'm wondering, were they as loud and unhinged, the feminists, I mean, back in 1977 as they are today? Or was did she just see something darker? This is very interesting, because I was under the impression of equal rights, but I wasn't around many years ago. And then it has become more radicalized over time. Now it's just like she's just deadly accurate for today. So I'm kind of wondering what was going on in the 70s.
Men or whatever. It is a negative view of life. It is a targeting of man as the enemy. It is a teaching of women that they've been oppressed. It's a chip on the shoulder attitude, and they wake up in the morning thinking the cards are stacked against them. Now, I don't think you get ahead in this world by projecting your problems onto society and saying that it's society's fault. Everybody has problems, but the positive person who seeks fulfillment and gets it is one who sets about solve her own problems in her own way. But you know, the Women's Liberation Movement's current vehicle is the Commission on International Women's Year, which has been having these state conferences all over the country. Now, it's interesting, if you look at those resolutions, they all call for Big Brother in Washington to solve their problems for them. Take care of your children, find them jobs.
I find that amazing that long ago. Now, how radical were these elements? I don't know. But one of the criticisms is that the government should take care of your children. That is amazing. Because why would you have them? We're going to take care of them. Why would I die? That one like blows me away, because it's like, wow, you're a despicable person. Like, there's no way to defend that. None. I'm going to breed, but not raise my children. And that's something to be proud and brave. And that right there, I'm like, okay, so you're evil. I mean, even I am pro-choice, because I understand the hellish nightmares broken families would bring their unwanted children, the hell that they go through. But to say, no, I'm going to have a child but not raise it, and that's the taxpayer's responsibility, I don't know aside from evil, I don't know what you are. So I'm shocked that she's mentioned this twice now and in such a matter-of-fact way. So this must have been something way before I remember it. Because the version we got was women want to be treated equal to boys. Like, okay, sure. You know, yeah, it makes sense. I don't want to raise my children. Well, hold on now. What? What?
Give you a shoulder to cry on. All their resolutions are the federal government should do this, and the federal government should provide this type of money, and so forth. And I think it's very interesting that these women who try to tell the world that they're self-reliant and...
Oh, she nailed it there. She nailed it there.
independent and as capable as men, look to the federal government to solve all their problems.
Well, of course, what they're trying to do in that particular instance, are they not, for example, in the area of daycare centers, is to get some support for poor working women who can then go out and work?
No, that it is not a project for the poor and needy. It flows from their rationale that it's so unfair that society expects mothers to look after their babies. And the code words that you should watch for in that debate are the words universally available for all socioeconomic classes. They want this to be a right of all women, of all...
Ooh, she nailed them there. She'd be a nice lady at the time. I'd be real curious. She's very well spoken, too. And she's put together, my goodness.
Mothers to park their children in a daycare center at the taxpayer's expense so the women can be out fulfilling themselves somewhere. And this flows from their rationale, their dogma, that it's so unfair that mothers are expected to take care of their babies. Now, of course, that's not my view at all. I think it's a great privilege to be able to take care of your baby.
Raise your children? What? A privilege? It's just so sad. You take this, and then you throw in my little more crass versions. And all these women today, and dads too, let's be very clear, and dads, just freaking the F out that no one is raising their children because the schools are closed. And then if you're a young person today or in the future, and you watch Phyllis Schlafly, what this lady's saying here, my God, how else do you conclude that your parents don't love you? It's so sad, just so despicable.
Rather than being compelled to join the workforce. I think the power to participate in the creation of human life is the great gift that God has given to women, and it's not an example of oppression. It's an example of a wonderful gift that women have. We really should get to almost a kind of spiritual approach to this thing, or a feeling approach to it. You really feel that the man should be the boss in the home, that there is such a thing as chivalry and all that sort of thing, don't you? All those old values.
Don't you? This is a PBS guy.
So many people today say...
I will say what you are saying.
They are passé. You believe it, do you not?
Well, as I look around the country, I see that all the successful organizations function with one head. We have one head of General Motors and the banks and the United States. We don't have a president and a co-president. We have a president and a vice president. And all the successful organizations that I know have one
the USS Enterprise, Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock.
final source of responsibility. And I think it's the same way with a marriage. Now, you can divide up the jurisdiction. One can take care of one area and one another. But if you're going to get along in a family unit, you've got to make some social compromises, and you have to have one ultimate source of authority.
The power of the positive...
She didn't even say it had to be the guy.
Woman is the title of your new book. What do you mean by the positive woman, and what kind of power do you think she has?
I think it's having a positive outlook on life. I look upon the women's liberation movement as essentially a negative view of life. And I think if you're going to have fulfillment and success in life, you have to start from a positive outlook, the idea that you can do it. And I have many, many cases of women in all fields, some married, some single, some in business, some in writing, homemakers and so forth.
Now we know this is all bullshit because in 1977, that many years ago when the dinosaurs ruled the earth, women weren't allowed to work or think or be out of the home. This is obvious all fabric. Women were out of the home. How do you think the divorces happened? Oh, this is funny.
Who have achieved success because of their positive outlook on life.
But isn't there a certain irony in that you're asking for a positive outlook when you are most famous for being anti-ERA?
Well, the reason we're against ERA is because we are pro-family and pro-women's rights and pro-local self-government instead of the federal government taking over. Now, there are two sides to the coin. And we think that, for example, that ERA is a massive shift of power from the states to the federal government. It's true you're anti-federal government taking more power, but you're also pro-local and state self-government.
But isn't it true that you're generally portrayed as an againer?
An againer?
Well,
isn't that the problem with conservatives? That they may be in their hearts and in their substance pro this and pro that, but they are portrayed as againers.
Well, what's the matter with being against sin? Now, 7 of the 10 commandments are negative. 8 of the 10 articles in the American Bill of Rights are negative. In fact, the whole philosophy of government is saying what government cannot do, and that's the way you keep free. That's the way you keep freedom. Is putting the shackles on government in order to keep them from doing things to you that you don't want them to do to you.
Well, okay, so we have that one. All right, now let's go to Miss America Season 1. Okay. How are they going to butcher this? I just fear. Season 1. Mrs. America Season 1? Oh, God, how many seasons? Whoever they got as an actress looks deadly like her. Wow. Okay.
I am not against women. I am not against women working outside the home. But what I am against is the women's liberation movement.
Who the hell is Phyllis Schlafly?
We need to get the word out quickly. We want the right to be a mother, the right to be a wife. The liberals want to create a sex-neutral, feminist, totalitarian nightmare.
God, this does remind me of the 70s. Just the fashion.
Do you know what you're saying has no basis in fact? Our movement is about fighting the oppression of all women.
And it's all the feminist women are pretty ugly. I don't know why they're doing that. I'm trying to figure out who... I'm a little bit confused because they make Phyllis Schlafly look prim and proper Stepford housewife, but the visual cues they're giving for the feminists are not... how they're portraying them physically is not exactly like, oh yeah, they're the obvious good people.
We do not want housewives thinking that we are against them.
We are against them.
Revolutions are messy. How long are we supposed to wait? How much time do we give people to adapt to change? Or am I the only one who's so fucking tired of waiting?
Based on true events.
This fight is not about equality. It's about power. And I'm just getting started.
We are a political movement.
This April, hang on. Miss America Season 1, how'd that do? Hang on, I know you didn't ask this, but Mrs. America ratings, how'd it do? Oh, of course, it's got the highest rating view, or highest reviews. It came out April 15th. And I'm not so concerned about reviews because you can get any political group to review it. I want to know viewership. Let's type that in, viewership. That's who it was, Kate Blanchett. Okay, I got it. TV series finale, blank roll. I don't want reviews. IMDb. Episodes. And I guess if you're on Hulu, how do you rate it? Recurring episodes, promo code, development, casting, release, receptions, its approval ratings, Metacritic. I want to know how many people actually watch the darn thing. Alright.
So now we're not going to have people we disagree with participate?
We don't get to decide how the battle lines are drawn.
Did you get so mean?
Yeah, okay, so she's the bad guy.
I have let you run around this country with your cause.
That's our cause.
Did you really think there'd be no casualties?
Why would God put this fire in me if he didn't want me to act on it?
Now they have her crying. Yeah, I saw, I don't believe it. There will be a video, like a made-for-TV thing about Aaron Clary, and I'll be 6'4", and I'll be a redhead, and I'll be Hmong, and I will have a successful career in banking, and then that's how they'll portray me. All right, there you go. All right, they obviously did not present her accurately because there's an agenda behind the video, and the agenda is to make money. I've written about it in several books, well, a couple of books, but several publications. Since 1977, hundreds of billions, if not trillions, depending how you want to measure it, have been invested in establishing a national religion. That national religion is an ism. Generally related to socialism, but that's not sexy enough, though some people subscribe to that. But usually it's feminism, environmentalism, veganism, pacifism, and the whole point and purpose not only to create leftist voters, but to also give people value without them having to do anything. They just have to believe in something, and it's usually good. Well, I'm for the animals. Well, good for you. I'm against child abuse. Well, how brave, you know. Now, through the schools and media and television and all that, you have a good solid 2.5, maybe even 3 if you want to say it, generations that have been brought up to not have a real religion, I won't say at the core of their values, but to have the politics be at core of their values. And the way you wonder why would a corporation take a political stance on anything? Would they not want people from the right and the left and the libertarian and the Marxist or whatever? Do you got money? We want your money. And here are the values and qualities of this very reasonably priced product. That is how you would sell people on things in the past. Now you have 2 full generations brought up that the way you sell to them is by playing to their politics. And feminism is, well, it accounts for half the population, you know, because women, not all women are feminists, of course, but the vast majority younger people, they have been steeped in it. And so you have this infrastructure. You have this interstate highway that's been laid down. Do you want to build your restaurants and cafes and gas stations near this highway or far away? And that's what you're seeing with movies and video games and everything. It's being built near this highway so they could capitalize on the indoctrination and the investment largely socialists have made into our young, and maybe not so young anymore nowadays. So yeah, it's going to be biased. The Republicans are going to be bad. Orange Man bad. NPCs. If you saw Miss Schlafly talking on PBS, or Mrs. Schlafly, I should say, she was very cogent. She was very precise. She was not mean or vile or anything like that, but they're going to make her the Wicked Witch of the North. And so there you go. I just don't have the care to watch Mrs. America Season 1. And how many seasons are you going to make out of it? So there you go. All right. Then you want me to read this article. Daily Signal. Problematic women. That word means nothing anymore today. Phyllis Schlafly's daughter tells true story Mrs. America chose to ignore. Yeah, I mean, it's... Do we even need someone to come out and say, I guess you should fight for your own, but... Isn't it just a given? Anything coming out of media about politics is going to be biased to the left. Name me one television show, one miniseries, one movie that, like, I'm thinking 300 maybe was the last time that, but it wasn't an overt political one. When was it made about politics? And it was for the right, or the conservatives, or the libertarians. I can't, do you know? I don't. But let's defend Mrs. Schlafly here from the other side anyway. The Hulu series Mrs. America depicts the work of Phyllis Schlafly to challenge the women's movement as pushed to pass the Equal Rights Amendment. The series perfectly captures Schlafly hairstyle and clothing choices, but doesn't accurately depict the conservative matriarch's kindness and strength as she rallied wives and mothers across America to oppose the Equal Rights Amendment. Today on Problematic Women, we welcome Anne Schlafly Corey, her daughter, to tell her true story of the ERA fight, who Phyllis Schlafly really was, and what the Hulu series gets right and what it doesn't. Man, could you imagine trying to watch that and go through it being the kid of the person you grew up with? Virginia Allen. Before we get really into the nitty-gritty of talking about the Hulu show, I did just want to give you an opportunity to talk about what it's like to see your mom inspire a whole new TV show and what it's like to see your childhood put on display. Anne Schlafly Corey. Well, it is exceptional. She was exceptional. I think about it. She came from nothing. She educated herself, but she lived in a very small town in the middle of flyover land. She was never elected to any office. She never held a government position, yet she had enormous power and influence over a 50-year career. Is that not inspiration or what? Lauren Evans, oh, it truly is. Okay, so there's several people interviewing Schlafly Corey. Schlafly again. Now, 4 years after her death, Hollywood still sees her as a threat, and I believe they see her as a threat because conservative women still admire her, follow her, and motivated by her. I think one of the overlooked things, and it's overlooked in this movie, My Mother Mentored Women. The movie shows her as quite condescending to her supporters when it was actually the opposite. She mentored women to get up, get out, and get involved in I know many women who started their own organizations because Phyllis told them to. Evans. And I want to give you a particular opportunity to tell us about a perspective that not only you could tell us about. What is it like growing up Catholic in Illinois and being one of Phyllis's 6 children? What was your childhood home really like? Corey. Well, they did get the details very right in that childhood home, even down to the tea kettle. It was an exact replica of our tea kettle in our kitchen. That'd be eerie. It was kind of almost creepy there, but I am the youngest in the family, so I'm portrayed as the one who won't go to bed, insists on sitting on her lap, which was true. It actually did happen, and it certainly, for me, my mother's office was the center of our house. She did all the work at home. So wait, your mom's lap was available for you to sit on? Can you explain that to millennials and Gen Zers, what that's like? I mean, I guess what we're all doing now today is working from our home office, and it was a beehive of activity. I think they kind of got that right, how much activity was going on, because she was industrious and the phone was always ringing. And back then, the way you communicated with people was either telephone or postal mail. And they were always done. and the phone was always ringing, and as the youngest, I got to be involved in everything, and on the front line, it was great fun. I recommend everyone to have a childhood where your mother's incredibly active and involved. Alan, oh, I love that. So much of the world does view Phyllis Schlafly as this powerhouse of a woman because she stood so firmly against the Equal Rights Amendment throughout the 1960s, 70s, and 80s and beyond. I mean, she had such a powerful presence in that political sphere, but to you, she was your mom. If you could describe her, maybe just a few words, how would you describe her? Well, I think another thing is that she was a powerhouse, and I think that's because she had integrity. Nobody ever had to guess what her opinion would be on any subject. You knew where she stood, and you knew what her opinions were, which there was no wiffle-waffling or flaking around on something, or she never said, I don't know. As a child, shall we say, there was never a negotiation about curfew. It was what it was, and that was it. You just have to accept that, but I do say that having such a strong and firm mother meant that I always knew what the lines were. There was I knew that I had to color inside the lines. Now, the other aspect of that I think is missed was her warmth. I believe that Kate Blanchett portrays her very chilly. Yeah, well, that's the point of the show. The audience is feminists. That's what the audience, that's the market. Very chilly, you can't inspire women to lead a movement if they find you cold and power hungry, and that she was not. She did not stand on a ceremony, and everybody called her Phyllis, and so she had a familiarity. And I found that people could always come to her with problems, and she was always. They write how she speaks, and not everyone speaks in perfect grammar. And she was always had an ear to listen to people and their problems and tried to help them. And I had a very warm and close relationship with my mother. And no, I didn't do everything right throughout my life. I think there were things that she wished I hadn't done or things that she wished I had done, but she was always very supportive and encouraging, and I think that's what one of her leaders said to me the other day. She said, I always called her Phyllis the encourager. Evans, and we talked a little bit about before your mother put herself through college, she was very intelligent, earned her bachelor's from the University of Washington and her master's in government from Radcliffe College. How did she get so interested in the political space? Corey, well, it's kind of funny how she got interested. Her family had no money to send her to college, so she had to work her way through college. And so she worked a manual labor job. Wonder how many women's studies majors know what that is. And I believe the hours were, I don't know, 4 o'clock to, I'm not sure, but it was late in the day shift or early evening shift. And so the only classes she could fit in her schedule were political science classes. That's why it became her major, because that's how it fit in. And when she got in, she thought it was very interesting. Alan, all right, I want to fast forward. We don't have a ton of time. So I'll make sure we get some of this meat. In the 1960s, the women movement was really, and then leading into the 1970s, was really strongly advocating the Equal Rights Amendment, which was really intended in their minds to bring about this gender equality into the law. Then in 1972, the Equal Rights Amendment, or the ERA, passed both House and Senate by an overwhelming majority. But in order for the bill to actually become law, it needed to be ratified by 38 states within 7 years or would die. What did your mom see in the ERA that so concerned her that she recognized was such a threat to American women and America as a whole? I think, Corey again, I think the equality of rights sounds so simple, and how could you be against it? But you have to follow the train of thought to how the implications would be, and if you erase any distinction on the basis of sex, will women lose at that point? Because there are a number of laws and customs that are there for the benefit of women and had changed in making men and women interchangeable in every situation as a harm to women. Now, but it's been a joyride for us, guys. It's just been a pleasure. Now, the arguments of the 70s, a lot of them centered around the military, the draft, the combat duty, but today the reason why Eagle Forum is still opposed to the idea that men and women have no distinction, no biological distinction, because the most vulnerable women would be harmed. And so if you look at schools, athletics, correctional institutions, women's shelters, any place where women have a safe space and privacy is threatened, if you cannot make a distinction on the basis of men and women, because ultimately there are true biological differences between men and women, and you can say that they don't exist, but you're fooling yourself. Yeah, yeah. Evans, and it's crazy in the show when she brings up those ideals and says, if you take away the distinction between men and women, this will happen. Everybody kind of treats her like she's crazy. Where are you getting that from? But it's funny. History shows that is what has happened. Corey, well, I always thought she was quite pressured in that she would see where these radical ideas would take us. Like, yeah, I was shocked how relevant what she said in an interview. What, 38 years ago? 43 years ago. almost describe it to a T now, and I'm trying like, okay, are you predicting what was going to happen, like scarily, eerily, accurately, or is this how bad it was back then? She saw, and it is true, that is how she saw this amendment, the movement, and I think it's portrayed in the movie as really a movement of elite women, and that the women that she knew in the heartland would be the ones who would bear the brunt of the results. Evan, the show, 3 of the 9 episodes, oh my goodness, have been released. How much of those 3 other 9 episodes have you seen? And then I want to kind of know about what, before seeing the show, did you know? Did the producers give you any kind of screener cards? Did they allow you to give any advice? Corey, I was not involved in the production. I tried, and recently I read one of the producers that they very much did not want to talk to any family member. Yeah, because why do that? Yes, because why confuse yourself with the facts when you already have your mind made up on exactly how you're going to portray Phyllis Schlafly? Yes, I did watch it all when it came out, and the part I think is really unfair to the supporters and volunteer followers of the Eagle Forum was how they portrayed the women of the Eagle Forum, and they very carefully do these very specialized portraits of the feminist leaders, some of whom people don't even remember, but instead they make up several fictional characters to drive the drama on the side of the conservative women. Now, there are a number of fabulous conservative women that could have made a true portrait of, but instead they want to make these composite figures, and in some way I think they are quite slanderous in how they present them. Yeah, the movie is not a documentary. It's not made to be a reality or a historical piece. It is propaganda. It has a political agenda. I mean, for example, they make up this character named Mary Frances, who's allegedly a leader from Louisiana, and she's racist. Well, the leader from Louisiana was Charlotte Felt, and she was not. They could have, you knew the racism was going to be in here. You knew that. They could have done their research on these true wonderful women, and then they go after my Aunt Eleanor, who was kind of comical because Eleanor was very involved in a conservative Catholic organization fighting communism. And to me, if you've seen it, what was comical to me is that when Phyllis and Eleanor went in a room, Eleanor dominated. Eleanor was one of the most forceful women I've ever known, and they made her into a wallflower. They didn't have a desire for the truth. They had a desire for their version of rewriting history. How long is this going to go here? Virginia, Illinois. So it's 2 young gals interviewing. Let's scroll back up. That's so sad, but I'm so glad that we're getting the true inside story from you today. You mentioned a little bit about some of these other women that were really working arm in arm with your mom. Well, how did the show kind of capture that dynamic, and how your mom actually worked with these women who were the moms and housewives, and maybe didn't have a formal education, but really trained them to be such powerful spokeswomen for women? Corey, she did train them, and that was a key part of what she did. There was a scene where it shows her getting a call from an eagle in Oklahoma. It says, we won, and my mom is shown there as quite dismissive of her hand and non-supportive, which is not at all. When my mother got calls like that, she jumped for joy and said, let's tell your story to everybody else so they could be encouraged by it. But the training was essential. My mother learned, as I always said, that she had a 3-minute speech. If you can't get your point across in 3 minutes, you're not able to make your point. You've got to learn your language, hone your skills to say it in 3 minutes. That's probably why she was a very good speaker during that interview, because that's the only amount of time anybody will ever listen to you. And she used to have training sessions where she would film her eagles, make it the 3-minute speech, and then she would watch them and critique them, and then they tried again until they would get better. She would have them learn how to dress and present themselves for cameras so they would look their best on camera. And so the training of the people was critically important to her success, because she knew she couldn't make the argument in every ledger. So, well, that part they did get accurate. The Eagles, I guess, Schlafly's group, the women were comported and put together a lot better than the feminists. She had an army of women in each legislature to make the argument she duplicated in her other words. I always remember one eagle who said she would play the cassette tapes back when you could pop a cassette tape in your car. She would play these cassette tapes in my mother's speeches and memorize them so she could say them just right when she would go out to do her lobbying, and she would have all her facts lined up. That kind of encouraging and training was a hallmark of how she motivated and had success across the country. I sure didn't see that on the bickering and infighting of the feminist side. I don't think they were training up future leaders. If your mom was alive, what do you think she would think about the show? Well, I think she would use it as an opportunity to get her message across. I mean, because it's a lot of people who see this movie have never heard of the fights of the 70s and may think the idea of equality of rights sounds pretty good. So I believe this is a fabulous opportunity to say, don't be a victim, don't fall prey to victimhood ideology, put yourself out there, and you too can make a success in your life. I love how she pointed out that all of it was government aid, and that's coming from women who claim to be independent. Which is so true. So good, Ann. Thank you so much. Ann, please stay with us. We're going to do some questions in audience with you. The first question comes from Charles McCaslin. He says, how did Phyllis Schlafly, as a Catholic conservative activist, forge alliances with previously apolitical evangelical women in the fight against the ERA? This is Corey, this is a critical element of her success, and I think it's one that is frequently overlooked. Normally, people congregate with their own tribe, and they don't get to know people outside the tribes. It's highly unusual, the idea that Catholics, evangelicalism, Christians, Latter-day Saints, Orthodox Jewish people, it was unusual that they could get together and agree and join the same organization, yet that is what happened because my mother had a great line. She would say, you may believe that the person you're sitting next to will not be saved, but you're going to work together on this issue. And so that creating these alliances across the religious spectrum to say there are issues that you agree on and you're more powerful if you work together. That was the start of the pro-family religious movement that so impacted the politics of the late 70s and early 80s. Our next question comes from Jillian Kinder. She says, hi, Virginia and Lauren, longtime listener to the podcast. Side note, any nice things, but I have a question for Ann. When I talk to the liberals and progressive about their gender wage gap and the balance that women choose in life, I'm often attacked for wanting women to stay in the kitchen or being okay with discrimination. How would you answer this accusation, rephrase the argument in order to avoid these accusations? Corey, we have equal pay for equal work since 1963, and when these compilations are made of the so-called gender wage gap, it's an average across the whole board. It's not a single job where one man is paid X and another one is paid 83 cents of X. That's not the way it is. It's an average across the board. If you work 60 hours or 80 hours, yes, you're going to make more money if you work 20 or 30. Just tells them the fact. Ellen. Yeah, well, Katrina Kenline asked the question, what is the biggest piece of advice you think Phyllis would want young women to know today? Well, it's definitely don't be a victim and don't fall prey to victim ideology. The feminist movements, and this was true in the 70s and still is true today, says because you're born a woman, you are a victim and you will have a challenging life, and that there's sexism against you and that you will have a hard time succeeding. But that's not the case. I mean, look at the incredible number of successful women, not only, but successful women throughout for decades. Not only now, but successful women throughout the decades and decades that we've had in the United States. Their success was because they had a positive attitude towards life. They didn't say, I'm a victim and the deck is stacked against me. We have so many questions coming in, but next one is from Abigail Cope. She says, the first episode implies that Phyllis stood up against the ERA to create political favor for her own ambitions. Can you speak to her motivations to launch a strong movement and how she expected it to affect her political career? Corey, the reason my mother got into politics was because she wanted to save America. She did not get into politics in order to boost her own ego. That was just not who she was. Her belief came from her faith. Her faith formed everything that she believed in politics. And so when this women's movement came along, she didn't oppose it because she thought it was an opportunity. She opposed it because she thought it would fundamentally change the relationship between men and women and go against her faith in God. And let's not to mention, destroy the finances of the United States. Manfred Wendt writes, do you think that Phyllis Schlafly is properly membered by the movement? He says she's often mentioned in regards to the ERA or the Eagle Forum, but what's your opinion, and do you think your mom's legacy is properly remembered today? Yes, because we're talking about right now, today, isn't this fabulous? Isn't this proof that it is? And certainly there are a lot of women who talked to, who were directly influenced by her, but now I think we're getting into younger women who were indirectly influenced by her. And so yes, she's not going away, and that's why Hollywood wants to bring her down. Anonymous, how can a working parent incorporate learning lobbying efforts to schedule into a schedule with young adults? Corey, well, I think it's always a question about time management, and that is, it's hard, but if you will always prioritize, feel really strongly about, I've got to go talk to my legislator about this today, and usually those are issues of the family. Okay. How can I become an eagle? I'm just going to skip through these questions. Since Hulu shows so blatantly anti-conservative women, should you actually watch and improve their ratings? No. What is the most important advice Phyllis would give to women who have been given the opportunity to speak and advocate? How did she believe that women would present themselves most effectively in the media? With style, grace, graciousness, and charm, and keep a smile on your face the whole time. Nobody ever had to tell my mother to smile. She was a model of how to dissent with courtesy. I think that's something for all of us to remember, that she never shouted, she never jumped up and down with grace and style. She was always posed and as opposed to those gals, the picture where they're naked and they're screaming. The scream off. Look at the feminist scream off. It's like, what is wrong with you? And that's the way your presentation can help your message. Don't be messy, be sharp. And my mother, she always had her hair and dress done. I mean, I never saw her pajamas in the house. I mean, on Saturday morning when she dressed up to go to the supermarket, she was dressed if she could be on a TV for a TV interview, because she said, you always be prepared. You never know when you're going to be interviewed on TV. Well, yeah, she never knew. Another question, what is one thing your grassroots activists can learn from your mother's activism? Don't think that it's an impossible battle. When my mother started fighting in the Equal Rights Amendment, not only were the Democrats and the feminists against her, but also her Republican president, 2 other presidents, and party platforms of both parties, the Hollywood culture, popular culture, Well, she didn't win. She didn't win. We just nearly times. It was my pleasure. I'll just add, one of the charges that's always made against Phyllis was that she was a hypocrite, that she was telling women to stay in the home when she was outside the home. Just for your information, she really was there. There was this kind of activism traveling the country, speechifying. She started to do when I was 10 years old, and I'm the youngest. And there comes a point where, shall we say, kids are happy when their parents are leaving the house. Or you say, do you really want to be around here all the time, or you're going to college or other things of that nature. And so I was the last one, and she took me around to a lot of her stuff. I think part of the reason they always try to make the hypocrisy charges, she actually looked younger than she really was. She looked good in 1977. She was a very attractive woman. She actually looked younger than she really was, and so they thought she was younger, and they thought she had younger kids at home. Oh, imagine that, women staying in shape, who knew? There's always this blowback of how she was a hypocrite and she was at home. I mean, yeah, she delegated, she had help, but she did what she wanted to do too. The other thing is that there was only one person she felt she had to please, and that was her husband. And as long as she pleased her husband, then she was free to do whatever she wanted. Ba-da-ba, thanks on that. So there you go. What's the name of this podcast, in fairness to the podcasters that put this together? This is The Problematic Women. Oh, that's the name of the podcast. Okay. Maybe we could look at that. Maybe I should run some ads on this. Problematic Women. Virginia Allen, how many followers does she have? Is this going to be a well-viewed? None. All right, never mind. Okay. And then the reader writes, hi, Aaron, payment has been made. Thank you for agreeing to my request. My husband listens to you often, so I end up listening to you too. Given what you have shared about the type of women you admire, I thought you enjoyed the interview with Phyllis Schlafly gave in 1977. I did. Explain her antipathy towards the women liberation movement. After watching it, I thought, wow, it's so refreshing to see someone who had her act together and could hold her own with grace and charm, despite the enormous wall of opposition to her. I also thought you'd get a kick out of hearing what kind of person she was from her daughter, a model of how to dissent with courtesy. What? Call me crazy. Think she was selfless. The fact that she loved her husband, wanted to do something for the country, whether you agreed with her or not, and stayed in shape and comported herself and put on, that's huge, because it's a pain in the ass to get dressed, but she did it anyway. I'm sure her husband appreciated it. Sadly they got divorced and I didn't know, but you want men to get and rise up and go do great and many things. Go be beautiful. It's one of the selfless, nicest, kindest things you can do for men, is you remain beautiful and attractive and supporting for him. Husband, boyfriend, fiance, or whatever. And even that is viewed as shameful and, oh, you're just obedient. Oh, you're just a slave. It's like, wow, you got no love, huh? I mean, just to want to love somebody, yes, I will sacrifice these things for you. And she was classy, I really did. She reminds me a lot of my grandma. Very charming. And my grandma was actually a very successful corporate woman, to be perfectly honest. Again, proof that the 50s were not these racist, or not sexist, where women were chained. She did good. But she's good at math, too. She beats me at cards all the time. And I'm good at math, too. So she must be better at math than me. Of course, it's disappointing and unsurprising to see how the Hulu series depicts Schlafly as the villain who dared to suggest a fight against the Equal Rights Amendment. However, as her daughter said in the interview, the fact that there's such a series about her in 2020 shows you how the left still views Phyllis Schlafly as a threat. Her ideas still matter, her legacy lives on. Thank you for remembering an amazing woman. There you go. Here's, you know what you want to do? Why don't you go look up the people that directed this and produced it? I don't know what those words mean, but the people that made this series, look at them. I almost can guarantee you they're not going to be as popular or successful, and I don't mean notorious popular, but they won't have the notoriety, they won't have the historical influence. They'll never achieve the prominence of Phyllis Schlafly. And probably if you go find them, in their heart, they're ugly people. Because, you know, I got news for you. If I'm in charge of a Hollywood studio, I'm not doing political movies. Because that's not fun. It's not enjoyable. I'd rather be doing other things. All right, there you go. Questions, answers, link down below. We'll see you guys later. Toodles.